Thinking like an economist, I'm not going to slice by profession, I'm going to slice by age. Age in terms of what you do when you're a student, and age in terms of when you're a new employee in an organizational setup. If it looks good enough, you might get in the habit very early on of saying, okay, this is fine. Correct. Lack of knowledge and where you get introduced to AI and what you use AI for is likely to anchor how much you're going to unquestioningly accept or move into system three thinking. So my worry is not by profession, my worry is by age. All the more reason for me to go back and reinforce a point I made in the earlier episode. Getting education right in the age of AI really and truly matters.
Ashish, welcome back to Signal Quest.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So we recorded one episode in February, and before we started, I checked Grok, and I checked Claude, and I checked ChatGPT. That how has the world changed uh, in the last 3 weeks, right? So most of the answers were around rising tensions in Middle East and this and that. We got a refresher course on Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations by Niranjan
Yes, yes.
in the North. And I think the most important thing is Carrick still remains unbeaten, has won both the matches since we last spoke. Right. So I think that should be the most important takeaway for both of us.
If this podcast ends up being about Niranjan's talk and about Manchester United, it'll be awesome. If we end up talking about everything else you mentioned, we'll see how it goes.
The last conversation was all about AI. This one is also going to be about AI plus some other things, right? So first question, Ashi. So is AI more like a labor substitute or a complement to human labor? And does that vary by skill level, industry, or geography? And I want you to take an economist's view to this.
Wow. Okay. Uh, the first thing that I'm reminded of is actually a paper that I just, not even a paper, somebody wrote a nice little program that allows you to read papers with interesting visualizations today. And the paper that I used to see how that tool works is a paper that talks about system one, system two, and system three thinking.
Okay. Okay. System three is new to me. Please tell me.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And not only is the paper interesting in and of itself, but it also, in a sense, allows us to talk about the question that you just asked. So the author of the paper says, system one, system two, we're all familiar with. For the benefit of those who are listening who are not, very briefly, system one, system two thinking is due to Daniel Kahneman, made most famous in his book Thinking Fast and Slow. System one is your automatic response. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 is system one thinking. But say, for example, figuring out how to do something deliberately and putting in a lot of thinking effort takes us to system two. I'm loosely defining both
Yeah.
terms right now. System three is a mode of thinking that is now available to all of us. It says, when do you decide to outsource the thinking to an AI? And which of AI's outputs are you going to accept unconditionally, uncritically, and which ones are you going to choose to think about? And if you choose to think about them, are you going to use system one thinking or system two thinking?
Oh, wow.
And if
That's
you
very interesting.
exactly, and if you think about it, it's worryingly applicable to everything that all of us do. The first time I started to read the paper, I asked myself how much of what I do in my daily life is going to fall into just accept uncritically. And I would love to run that experiment. But you can see why I wanted to bring up that paper when you asked the question that you did. The biggest worry for all of us is going to be to slide into unconditional acceptance. The AI research community refers to this as gradual disempowerment, where you increasingly begin to accept the output of the AI without, let alone evaluating it, not even thinking about whether it looks right or wrong.
Right.
My biggest worry, both with myself and with either folks that I teach or folks that I work with, is that we are all going to start to slide over into just unconditionally accepting things. And the way it'll happen is very much a slippery slope. So if you say your assessment of what my inbox needs to look like, your assessment of my calendar, maybe I'm not going to question too much. But an essay that you write for me or a blog post that you write for me, I will evaluate a fair bit. But there is, I think, likely the case that we are all going to start to shift towards more and more of unquestioning acceptance. Thinking like an economist, I would say this will correlate most with, and this is also my biggest worry with academia, I'm not going to slice by profession, I'm going to slice by age.
Okay.
Age in terms of what you do when you're a student, and age in terms of what you accept when you're a new employee in a firm or an organizational setup.
Hmm.
Because you don't have those so-called ground truths, because you don't know enough to be able to judge whether the output is good or bad. If it looks good enough, you might get in the habit very early on of saying, okay, this is fine.
Correct.
And then as you start to do this for some aspects of your work or some aspects of your conversations, the temptation to slide over might be increasingly higher. I notice this, by the way, in the work that I do with a legal firm that I consult with. I'm not a lawyer. So whatever I know, I am able to evaluate fairly well. But anything related to aspects of law that I do not know, not only can I not evaluate it, I just blindly accept it.
Hmm.
But then in a complex project, I often find myself in acceptance mode, even accepting something that I know enough to be able to evaluate. So lack of knowledge and where you get introduced to AI and what you use AI for is likely to anchor how much you're going to unquestioningly accept or move into system three thinking. So my worry is not by profession, my worry is by age and when do you get used to AI. If you get used to AI while completing dumb, stupid assignments in college, then the likelihood that you will unquestioningly accept its output is that much higher. All the more reason for me to go back and reinforce a point I made in the earlier episode. Getting education right in the age of AI really and truly matters.
This is really, fantastic, Ashish, the way you explained this. Two things, I was thinking about. One was this whole misinformation and disinformation that has been happening over the last 10, 15 years over WhatsApp. Right?
Yeah.
I remember I was part of a group where somebody posted about some Mohammed Rafi, clip saying Mohammed Rafi sang this particular song and, all of that, and it somehow seemed not right, so I actually
Mm.
went, searched up, and there was actually an article in Bangalore Mirror of all places where they said that this is a WhatsApp forward that's been going around. It is not the case, and I don't remember this. So this person who had posted this, very big personality in Indian tech industry, we happened to be on the same group, and he just did what everyone else does, right? Forwarded as received,
Yeah.
without checking.
Yeah.
And I tried to fact check, and I said, see, if you're doing this with something which you think is seemingly harmless, like whether Mohammed Rafi sang a particular song or not, you might be doing it for so many other things. This was my stance at that point of time, but I think that was around 4 or 5 years ago. I have now stopped doing all those fact checks on those groups.
Yeah.
Right, but that is that is an example. And in fact, the other day, before, not Naveen, Sudhir and I were discussing, and I had this exact same conversation in a different way, where I was talking about how, when I'm trying to so-called code something using Claude code,
Yeah.
uh, I will just accept it. And Naveen was saying, "Oh no, you have to actually, ask Claude to check 5 times.
Yeah.
That's the only way it's going to be right." And I said, "Oh, I actually never do that when it comes to code, but everything else, I'm pretty sure where to pick or not." So I think I'm already falling prey to that. In some cases, like you said, things that we feel we know,
Yeah.
we are confident about, we are able to take calls, use our own judgment, but a lot of other things we're just taking as is,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's already happening. So yeah, what
Exactly.
do about it?
Like I said, with the cross section that I most worry about is young people, but to take your own example, so because it happened to be a Mohammed Rafi song, and because I know how much of a fan you are of both Bollywood and of Rafi, you responded the way you did because, like you said, it didn't sound right to you. You were
Right.
exercising taste and judgment. But if
Hmm.
it had happened to be, say, for example, a Tamilian song, or if it happened to be from a era of Bollywood music that you don't particularly care for, then perhaps you would have just accepted it. And the reason I bring up this analogy is because as the world gets more and more complicated, we spoke about how insanely complicated it has gotten just over the past 3 weeks. There simply is too much out there for us to keep track of. There was a time where I thought I could keep on top of global affairs and what is changing in tech and econ and so on and so forth by reading an insane number of blogs and newspapers every day. But increasingly, I just give up. There is too much to keep track of. Even
Correct.
within the field of AI, which I like to
Hmm.
think I read about extensively, some days I just find myself saying, you know what, I just can't. This is beyond me. So if Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini says this is how it is, I say, okay. And the more we face that uh, environment of things being increasingly complicated, the more you're going to do this. This is not new, by the way. There's an economist called Herbert Simon who won the Nobel Prize, and one of his fantastic concepts was that of satisficing,
Yeah.
which basically says that you try to do the best that you can in the face of a variety of different things, including the environment that surrounds you. But beyond a point, you're going to give up, and perhaps giving up is rational. So who
Hmm.
knows? Those young people ceding the taste aspect to Claude may actually be rational in the environment that we grow up in. Who's to say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I see that happening more and more, right?
Yeah.
Where it's satisfying. It's not a question of being, it's not a question of apathy, right? It's just impossible for you to
Correct.
keep track. So what do you do? I mean, that day I was traveling from Mumbai to Pune. The previous day I had meetings till late, and I come here and Sudhir and Naveen are talking about the ultimatum given to Claude, and I'm like, okay, what happened? I just missed one day of news cycle, man.
I am deeply worried about that for a variety of different reasons. The ultimatum given to Claude. So, a couple of people I follow on Twitter had been highlighting that this was going to be a problem beginning the previous weekend, but the consensus was that what has happened simply could not happen. That there was too much riding on the AI industry for the kind of move that did take place to have
Hmm.
taken place. But
Hmm.
hey, we live in a world where sensible economic predictions simply don't work out. And there are lots of things that are worrying about the Claude ultimatum. We'll see. Both your questions at what happens in the world to come.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So that's a nice segue to the next question, Ashish.
Mhm.
So know about Ricardian's idea of comparative advantage, right? So how would you reframe comparative advantage in an economy where AI dramatically changes relative productivity across sectors?
Yeah, at the margin, which means the better and better AI gets, the question is about where relative prices finally converge. So I'll translate that into normal human speak. As economists,
Yes.
we love speaking in abstract, ridiculous jargon. All that I'm trying to say is it makes sense for AI to trade with me right now on certain tasks. I use the word trade very loosely over here as a way for AI to say, I can do this task myself or I cannot do this task. And similarly, a human can say, I can do this task myself or not do this task. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it boils down to opportunity costs. It makes sense for me to do that which will give me the highest reward. And I could have done this other thing, but it won't give me as high a reward. So I'll pass it on to somebody else to do. And both humans and AIs can think about this in these terms. But as the capabilities of AI get better and better, one, and second, the cost for AI to do a particular task keeps on falling. So if you take a look at how the Pareto frontier for AI capabilities and AI costs has been falling, ChatGPT 4 today costs, I'm not even sure about the magnitude right now, roughly speaking, 200 times lesser as it did when it was launched. So the
Right.
cost reductions are so much that beyond a point, you're simply going to say it is just not worth our while to have humans do this at all.
Hmm.
And at that point, comparative advantage simply doesn't work. Number one. And second, comparative advantage only works under the conditions that both parties who are trading are clear about who owns what property rights. But as AI systems get more and more advanced, it is quite natural for an AI system at one point of time to start to think about property rights. And when I say start to think about, I don't mean emergent consciousness or anything weird
Hmm.
like that. It just is going to reach a stage where either the AI or the people who fund the AI are going to ask, what exactly does property right mean in the context of a task being outsourced? Both of these things, I think, ultimately will result, to go back to your original question, in AIs and humans not being substitutes for each other. But I'm not implying that this is going to happen day after tomorrow or even this year or perhaps even by 2030. But
Hmm.
if you think about the trend that we are going in and if current rates of progress proceed, then hopefully somebody somewhere is thinking about these questions.
Right, right. So, given this, as an economist, what would you recommend countries should be specializing in and why?
Difficult to answer at the level of a country, but I could think about how to answer this question in the context of individuals. Those services that are likely to be valued by other humans are likely to rise in value where human to human trade is concerned. And it's not, I don't say this as theory, so I try to apply this in the context of my own life as well. There are lots of different things that I'm doing, but these days, most of the things that I do are either very heavily focused on AI or are deliberately nothing to do with AI at all, with very little happening in the middle. So, not,
Hmm.
for example, is not about AI at all. We don't even record the talk. So, there's no question of AI analyzing anything. It's very much an in person event where the value comes from getting a bunch of people together at a particular place. The Gen Y summer camp that I work at, where I work with young kids for 3 weeks in Manipal, is again very much anti AI. So, I'm hoping that some of the things that I do generate value in the world to come because of the human to human interaction. But the other things that I do try to are an attempt on my part to keep myself competitive in this industry. What can I do where I can show the value to economic actors in terms of what capabilities I bring to the table in regard to how well I work with AI?
Hmm.
And over the last 6 months itself, I have found that there are certain things that I could bring value at that are now being completely automated by AI. So I no longer bring value in that specific task. Then my task is to figure out how can I think one level up. So if I could do task X, what is it that necessitates task X in the workflow in the first place? Can I take control of that workflow? Or can I ask the much more basic question of why was the workflow created in the first place?
Hmm.
But those are the kind of things that AI forces you to think about. So in my own personal life, I try to apply what I just said to you. At the margin, I think every individual should be doing exactly what I spoke about, and you can aggregate that up at the level of a country. So my answer at the level of the country would be the same as the level of a individual. Each individual should try to figure out what is going to drive human to human interactions and see what you can contribute in that regard. But with regards to AI, if you tie the two questions you asked together, do I think AI is a perfect complement or a perfect substitute? And if it is eventually going to be a perfect substitute, then the strategy for a country should not be dependent on can I do something that will allow me to, in some sense, trade with AI going forward? My answer to the first question helps me answer the second one. And therefore, human to human becomes more important.
Okay, so this is great, but let's just look at an intermediate level. Let's look at a corporation.
Hmm.
We spoke about humans.
Yeah.
You spoke about how humans should think about themselves.
Yeah.
How should corporations be thinking? And this is both the abstract corporation as well as the leaders who are responsible for orchestrating what the corporation and what the humans in the corporation should be doing were basically in charge of both the AI and the corporations, and how both sorry, AI and humans in the corporation, and how they are dealing with other AI, humans, market, all of that. Is there any difference?
Yes, there is. So let's take the example of firm X that does activity Y. So I'm trying to be as general as possible. So there's a firm X that engages in activity Y, has customers Z, and those customers are increasingly going to come to firm X and say, can you do the same thing that you're doing for me, but at a lower cost?
Right.
As you start to deploy AI, you're going to be able to do things presumably either of higher quality or at lower cost or both. So you should be passing on some of those advantages to us. So there has to be a reduction in billing. The minute there has to be a reduction in billing, which means the revenue that your firm is earning, there has to be a concomitant reduction in either capital or labor, your two inputs. Obviously, it is going to be a reduction in labor. So the way firms are going to have to transition towards the world that we are going in a sense, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The only way you can compete in this world is by driving higher efficiencies using AI, which means you're going to reduce your labor inputs. But what that means for the firm is by definition going to have fewer and fewer people over
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
What that end game will look like, what that will mean for people who necessarily will not have incomes from the firms that they were working in, and what that means for macroeconomics is a whole separate question. But for the firm itself, at least in the transitory period, lower labor inputs and higher outputs has to be a game that you're going to have to play. So firms are going to be more AI based, whether they like it or not. And a direct corollary of that is more and more firms are going to have fewer and fewer people. We're already starting to see evidence of this. At least I am starting to see evidence of this in some of the consulting projects that I do. I'm guessing you are as well. And what you're looking at is a choice that is being forced on firms because of the market that they are working in. There is, over the next 2 years, going to be lower and lower labor input and higher AI deployment. And what we're
Right.
looking at is economics price working out at play in each of the
Hmm.
fields. It's
Hmm.
inevitable.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. We also, in since our last conversation, we also saw Jack Dorsey, you know,
Yeah.
reducing his D. But when I was reading about that news, I was reminded of how bloated Twitter was when he left. And when Elon Musk came in, they said that, oh, Twitter is not going to be able to survive all these cuts. But it did fine. Purely in terms of the availability of the platform and
Yes.
features and capabilities. I'm just talking about that.
Agreed. Yeah.
So maybe he just realized that I've built another bloated organization and I should cut it before someone else
Yeah.
does that.
Absolutely. And mine as well. And my second reaction was that probably means there are at least two variables at play. So it probably is AI, and then, oh, we have hired too much, or oh, we have hired too much and might as well also take advantage of what AI enables.
Hmm.
To what extent which factor is responsible, I don't suppose anybody except Jack will really and truly know. My own
Right.
personal probability estimates are about 60 to 65% too much staffing, 30 to 35% AI. But that's a guess. Each of us will have our own guess.
Yeah, yeah. And extending that to the whole IT services and all other industries as well, right?
Yeah.
If you just go by pure market economics, things should be way more efficient than what they are today, uh,
Yes.
which is what AI is probably, just forcing all companies to do today.
Yep.
So that way, it's actually a good thing. And if you just look at a very macro level, if you have more, companies doing more with less,
Mm.
you might actually have more companies as well, right?
Yeah.
Which had not gone and approached, trying to fix some problems which, earlier would have been either considered, impractical or not feasible or whatever.
Yeah.
But now you're just probably just going to go and do it because, yeah, you have people available and you have technology.
Absolutely. And personal productivity is also going to go up. All of us who are working with Claude Code are suddenly realizing, oh, this thing that I would never have attempted myself, now I can try and do. And all of us have examples of how we have done awesome things to our calendars, to our reading habits, to processing inboxes. Twitter and LinkedIn are full of, look at what I did, which is great. But the reason I bring this up is it's not just firms that are going to discover new things to do, it is also individuals who are going to discover new things to do, and you are likely going to see 1 or 2 person firms become quite big. So, in a sense, the boundary between what an individual is and does and what a firm is and does is going to start to blur a little bit.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
What that means for our culture going forward, what that means for, and when I say culture, I don't use the word lightly. Water cooler culture is going to struggle in the world that you and I are talking about right now. A lot of learning happens. Westerners would have said water cooler. I prefer to use sutta chai and sutta breaks.
Right.
Neither of us are smokers, but most conversations are going to happen when people step out for a cup of chai. So you do the work, but you reflect on the work in a slightly more relaxed fashion. But if
Hmm.
it is a 1 or 2 person firm, then that exchange of human to human knowledge is going to be a little difficult to make happen. And
Right.
that is a underrated thing that companies allow you to do. Companies are also social hubs in a professional context. So how does our culture adapt to sitting at home and working and not meeting other people in a quasi-social professional context is I think an interesting challenge for our culture going forward.
Or maybe an opportunity for someone to actually build something which allows people to do some of those social interactions, like how we come up with not maybe something smaller for smaller groups of people, and those groups of people may not be full-time employees of organizations anymore. There may be, all of them may be freelancers who are just coming together to work on a particular project, right? So
You're saying WeWork was 10 years ahead of its time. Yep. And this ties back to a couple of thoughts that I've had. One of my favorite blogs to have written on my blog was about how education is really three businesses rolled into one. So it's LinkedIn, Coursera, and Starbucks. LinkedIn is the degree, a college provides you the degree. Coursera provides you the education, college provides you the education. But also, college provides you that social setting of meeting with friends, hanging out with
hmm,
them, whatever it may be. And that's where the Starbucks angle comes in.
hmm,
I
hmm,
can completely imagine a university where you don't go to learn from a professor in a physical classroom, but you just go to hang out with other people who are also in learning mode.
hmm.
And so the university becomes quite literally a place for curious learners to hang out and chat with each other about what they're learning. Carefully designed, this is basically like a asynchronous knot, if you will, that
Hmm.
simply happens to welcome anybody who's wanting to be on that campus during learning time and hanging out with each other and socializing. Is I think a very viable business worth building. So a hybrid or the love child of a Starbucks and a university.
So, I don't know if you've read Sal Khan's One World School House or One World School or
No, I
something
have
like
not.
that. That's his book.
Okay.
So there are two. It's a two-part book. I mean, the book is it's just one I mean, one thing, but there are two parts. So first part talks about how the Khan Academy came about, where he first started, teaching. I think his niece or someone, and then he started posting some videos for her, and then it just became this whole thing. The second part actually talks about his vision of a school of the future, where he says that people come together. It's not like kids or learners are divided to classrooms or anything, but there's like one space where they all come together to learn. Each one is actually learning something on their own,
Yeah.
very similar to what we just described. So that was one thing which I was reminded of when you said that. I wanted to ask you one clarification. So a lot of kids and parents, and in fact, even when we went, to do our post grad in B schools or whatever, so the LinkedIn part of the college or university was also about getting a job, right? So called ROI on whatever you are putting, especially in India. I mean, kitna deti hai, or use that in the context of a company. What is the job? What is the average median salary that you're going to get? Is a question that everyone looks at, right? Which I'm guessing is the LinkedIn part in terms of credentials, and then getting a job is what you are talking about. Something that we were thinking about just a couple of days earlier was that given how students are going to struggle with finding an entry level job in a lot of the organizations because of all the things that we have spoken about. Is there a need for somebody to become this Sherpa for everyone, or for these young students? Almost like what a career counselor or a college counselor does today, but where the focus is to get an admit in a particular college, but not that, but actually help them figure out what kind of internships they should take now, because like we were discussing in the last episode, that kids learning will now have to include some of this apprenticeship that they will have to really do to be able to say that we are ready for a job where we are actually going to give you value or output better than the standard AI that you have. So how do you get these, internships, or where do you get this apprenticeship and all of that? Again, is that the kind of, new jobs, work that's going to emerge?
It should. I don't have a concrete answer to how what you have described should happen, but I very strongly believe that it absolutely should happen. And this actually doesn't have anything to do with AI per se. I think our university model when it comes to higher education has been broken for a very long time.
Correct.
We don't provide good enough mentorship or what the Germans call the Fachschule approach as opposed to the Hochschule approach. So
Hmm.
learning is one thing, but learning with a master, and
Hmm.
I use the word master in the sense of a apprentice and a master in that sense.
Right.
That model has been missing in India even before the age of AI. After the age of AI, I think it's, or in the age of AI, it's a survival thing. It's not a nice to have thing or something only world class universities should have. So I
Hmm.
don't disagree with you about the need. How it is going to happen and how we are going to transition from the world that we are in right now to that world is a very interesting question. So you and I agree that we need to go there. But
Right.
what is step one from here is a surprisingly difficult question to answer because of the inertia in higher education. The
Hmm.
system is set up where students are so invested in which university can I get in? Once I get in, how many marks can I show on my report card? And how can I land a job? That it's literally like Charlie Chaplin in modern times. There's no thinking
Correct.
about it. This just has to be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that entrenched culture is very difficult, therefore, as a consequence, to break. My own preference would be to start by dramatically reducing the number of classroom hours and introducing the ability to have people who work in corporate just come and spend time on campus and have as much as possible of both students and faculty spend time in workplaces.
Hmm.
This need
Hmm.
not be work, this need not be project, don't call it a formal internship. Just go there and stay there. Learn through osmosis, have conversations. Your job is only to sit and watch. If somebody tells you something, if somebody talks to you, great. See what happens. This is going to
Hmm.
be boring as hell to begin with, but that's generally speaking how you end up learning by just observing and waiting for that one moment or spark where you are needed or something happens and magic takes over after that. Would be my preferred way of taking step one from here. So if you have 100 hours in a classroom today, take it down to 80 today and start with 20. Next year, make it 60. The year after that, make it 40. And I'm not saying classrooms should be abolished or banned altogether. There is still a space for them, but much lower than where it is right now.
Do you see anyone in the world of academia actually thinking or talking about this? You know.
I wish I could say yes. No. And
Hmm.
two things that, in addition to what I just spoke about, the other thing that worries me about academia is, and all the more important because of how fast things are moving, somebody somewhere in India should be thinking about how to get tokens at a university level. It's no longer about getting the $20 a month subscription plan. That, in fact, if anything, may be actively harmful because
Hmm.
that leaves students with the idea that you know AI if you know how to chat with the web application.
Hmm.
But good luck trying to find a job in today's labor market if you have never used Codex or Claude Code or Anti Gravity or one of the model tools. Which means at the university level, somebody somewhere should be thinking about these are the number of tokens that our university has available to use on a given day. And here
Hmm.
is how we are changing our syllabus to talk about agentic workflows to learn and to build tools. And
Hmm.
this needs to happen yesterday.
Right.
But both what we spoke about earlier and this needs to change. And hopefully, you and I will agree on why it needs to change because you and I know how much of our daily workflows is being done via Cloud Code or Codex or whatever
Hmm.
it may be. I can assure you that's not how students are learning right now.
Correct. Yeah, this reminds me of that Yes Minister episode, right, where they're trying to reduce the, I think, size of the government,
Uh-huh.
and it's the bureaucrats who are responsible for figuring out how to reduce the size of the government. And this, how is that going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because we cannot, cut our own legs.
Yeah.
So that is how this is, no? So the universities have to start thinking of cannibalizing themselves, and that's not something which comes naturally. You need to have a lot of confidence in your own abilities to actually say that no, I need to do less of what I'm doing, because you would be confident that you are going to add value somewhere else. Only then will you actually say that no, whatever is going on well for today, though I don't know whether tomorrow is going to work or not, but today I'm able to get my money for what I'm doing. So I will not put it at risk, at any kind of risk, which is what I guess is the biggest roadblock to this.
Yeah, but as an economist, I would say it's not like I disagree with you at all, in complete agreement with all of what you said. But there is also a deeper reason for why universities are going to struggle with this outside of inertia. Pricing is a major problem. If you talk about access to tokens and thinking about how to develop courses with the help of Claude code, it's a no-brainer that a student is going to learn much faster than they are learning right now.
Hmm.
So let me use an example from a subject that I happen to be teaching right now. Say, for example, we decide that we are not going to teach students how to solve ANOVA problems by hand,
Hmm.
which means you don't need to spend those 4 hours telling people how to solve a ANOVA problem by hand. You just say, this is how you do it using software. Here is the idea, here is the concept, here is the theory, here is how to solve it. But this will not take more than a couple of hours max. And if you
Right.
take that logic or extend that logic to the 4 years that a student spends in undergrad program, that can
Hmm.
in some cases come down to, I'm not joking, even 6 to 8 months, in some cases maybe 2 to 3 years.
Hmm.
How do you price this course for both sets of students?
Hmm.
Right now,
Hmm.
universities know that you're going to spend 4 years, so I'm going to charge X amount per semester.
Correct.
But if you switch to learning as defined by output rather than learning as defined by time spent in college, then
Hmm.
how do you price it?
Hmm.
Do you ask the more efficient students to pay less? What kind of perverse incentives does that create? Do you incentivize students to stay back for a higher amount of time in college? What kind of perverse incentives does that create? These are not easy problems to solve.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
part of the problem is inertia. Part of the problem is just plain simple economics.
Correct. Yeah. 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 So I'm going to ask you a very personal question then, right?
Mhm.
We both have kids.
Yeah.
So what should we tell our kids to, how should they think about education and learning? Because uh, I don't know if you know son daughter is anyways in college, but son is going to be okay with my radical take that college is the way college is currently, it's a waste.
Yeah.
He's going to say, boss, you finished your college. That's why you're saying all these things. Don't put me at risk like this, right? So what do we tell them? What is the best way for them to navigate this? And here we may have to be so-called practical, right?
Yeah.
Where they may still need the credentials to go with the world that they're currently in, I'm
Mhm.
guessing.
Mhm.
But they may need to have the learning and being ready for the world. That has to happen somewhere else. Is that how you think? Is that what you are advising? Your
Yeah. So you asked a personal question. I'm going to reply with the details of my personal life. I and my wife have already been arguing about this, and our arguments are going to get worse as our daughter grows older. She's 13 years old right now. And my stance about her education comes down to two things: passion and curiosity. By which I mean, the unforgivable sin is to not have a passion. I don't care what that passion is. It can be collecting stamps, it can be, as it is in her case, learning Bharatnatyam, it can be something else. But
Hmm.
you need to have a madness, a junoon about that passion.
Hmm.
And that passion should incite curiosity within you. And that curiosity means that in my daughter's case, if it is Bharatnatyam, then she should read every book that she can lay her hands on about Bharatnatyam, listen to every podcast, attend every performance, go speak to as many Bharatnatyam instructors as possible. It should be madness where I and my wife have to tell her that, look, tone it down a little.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is because so long as I can see that passion and therefore that curiosity is there in one thing, it is possible to invoke it in something else, either because she herself decides that this is my new passion or because somebody is able to convince her that this ought to be your new passion.
Hmm.
Learning will follow from there on in, but mentorship is important because having that passion is not enough. You need that mentor, which you spoke about earlier in this conversation, to guide and nurture that passion and to develop that curiosity. But that passion must come first. And to me,
Hmm.
that's all that you need to do in today's day and age. I would
Hmm.
much rather said that she does this than earns a BA degree. I think earning a BA degree by sitting in class for 4 hours is actually going to be worse than this if she does this right.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have no idea if she's going to be able to do it right. But even if I and my wife succeed at doing this right, we can't scale it. One is enough of a headache, and in your
Hmm.
case, two is enough of a headache.
Hmm.
So parenting becomes more important in the age of AI. But to me, acquiring a degree simply isn't as important as it used to be earlier. But my wife disagrees, and I'm not saying that I am right and she's wrong. It's the world
Hmm.
that we have grown up in. I happen to think that the world is changing. She thinks not. But I think a lot many people are going to have this argument in the days to come. But my own personal answer is education does not mean the acquisition of a degree in today's day and age. Education itself becomes very important. Credentialism is not just down to zero. It actually, if anything, is negative now. My worldview. I'm not saying you should agree or your listeners should.
Yeah. But again, I think we are veering away from the questions that I have, but this is interesting. So I'm just going to take this further, right? Not everyone is going to be having a burning curiosity
Yeah.
at this point of time.
Yeah.
When I say at this point of time, at any given point of time, at whatever age, right? But they may be able to, get there
Yeah.
at some time. So in that case, what would your advice be? Because I think we have all gone through the Brownian, motion ourselves in terms of, doing all kinds of random
Yeah.
things before we for now feel that, yeah, this is something which is, very interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm using that for now very, very deliberately because,
Yes.
having seen myself over the last 20 years, I may just go want to do something completely different in 28.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
No matter what you do, you should have that curiosity around it. And that
Correct.
curiosity you develop over time. So, in fact, if
Hmm.
anything, I would say the career path that you just described for yourself, and mine has been very similar.
Hmm.
I have been in data analytics, then I've been in energy economics, then I've been a visiting faculty, then I've been a permanent faculty, and now I'm an AI expert for a legal firm.
Hmm.
None of this makes sense. And if you had told me that this is what my career is going to be 20 years ago, I'd have laughed in your face.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that at least in my case, and I would suspect in yours as well, we are making an argument for what I just described. Without that curiosity, we would not have had the courage or the madness, use whatever word you will, to take the paths that we have taken.
Hmm.
It is that curiosity and perhaps the boredom with what you're doing right now that helps us transition. But that curiosity is also a superpower in the sense that whatever it is that we decide to do anew, we are we have our internal inherent skill sets with us,
Hmm.
which is the curiosity that we have honed over time.
Hmm. Hmm.
In fact, I would say not changing your career means by definition not being curious, in the sense that you're going to get better and better at your job, but that is because you're not curious about what else is happening. I don't mean that pejoratively. I just mean that you're choosing to go deep rather than go wide. But in the age of AI, I think going wider rather than deeper makes sense. So long as you have the discipline to maintain that sense of curiosity, to maintain that sense of discipline about learning a new subject. And so it actually encourage people to do more, not less Brownian motion.
Right. Sailor Jibs तो उस जमाने में कह के गए थे what do they know of cricket who know only about cricket.
Correct. Beyond the boundary, no? It's a lovely book.
Yeah. But sometimes it also feels like we may have been fortunate and privileged enough to be thinking in a
Oh,
very
yes.
world kind of way, right? Again, I don't think you have an answer, but
Yeah.
yeah, but what would be the broad brushstroke answer to this? Because people are going to want to defer to set, you know, set assembly line, right?
Yeah.
For want of a better word.
Set assembly line in a way is actually minimization of risk. So I often, when I teach introductory economics, I often tell my students that your parents wanting you to be an IAS officer rather than have your own startup is not them trying to be cruel towards you or restrictive. They're simply saying minimize risk rather than maximize profit.
Right.
It's the equivalent of taking out a fixed deposit, writing the UPSC.
Correct.
And what they are saying to you is in a world of great uncertainty where you may not get the job that you want or the startup that you desire will not succeed, this is the safer thing to do. Substitute UPSC for engineering, medical, CA, whatever. It's the
Correct.
same logic. I have been through it myself. You have, both of us are in the same age bracket where we were encouraged to take the right career. And when I say right, it was right if what you want to do is risk minimization. But good luck trying to explain risk minimization to a passionate 18-year-old.
Yeah.
But for people who don't have the kind of privileges that you and I just take for granted, that risk minimization route may have been the sensible thing before the age of AI. I would say the risk minimization route is actually the more risky route in the age of AI. If for whatever reason you don't succeed in that chosen career, being average in that career is going to be very, very difficult.
Hmm. Hmm.
which is not a happy state of affairs. This is not me saying that you should take the risk. The point of your question was, what about the people who cannot afford to take the risk? And you
Hmm.
yourself said, I don't have a good answer. You're right. I don't. To the extent possible, you should take that risk. And
Hmm.
I would much rather not think about what is going to happen if that risk doesn't work out.
Right.
It's a
Yeah. Tough.
deeply disturbing thought. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough.
yeah.
Yeah. Let me come back to some of my AI related questions, which are tough but not as. And I know this was tough.
Yeah.
I did want to, but I just
No,
couldn't stop
trust
myself.
me, I think about it every day. So don't worry about asking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So automation historically creates new opportunities, but AI is different, right? It does cognitive work. So what economic mechanisms could ensure that AI-induced displacement doesn't permanently trap workers in low productivity jobs? We probably still continuing to what we just spoke about earlier, but
Like I said, human to human interaction is going to, when I say rise in value, not just in terms of monetary rewards, but also in terms of demand. I often, uh, when I think about the philosophy of economics, I often ask what is the opportunity cost of more efficiency in trade? So
hmm,
we've often spoken about you want to get more efficient in terms of trading. But if ultimately more and more efficiency means lesser and lesser human interaction, then are we in a sense not failing to realize the opportunity cost of that greater efficiency, which is the inability to have more and more human connections, by which I don't just mean water coolers, but also just the fraying of human society. If you catch yourself not wanting to meet people, if you catch yourself not responding to messages on WhatsApp, if you catch yourself saying, I would much rather sit at home and read something on my computer than go out and meet people.
hmm,
And
hmm,
each of these things has happened to me in the past. Thankfully,
hmm,
not
hmm,
everyday occurrence, but it has happened. And I'm being quite frank about it. That is something you should guard against. And you should not sacrifice the value of human connections at the altar of efficiency. So, in the age of AI, perhaps hopefully, we will realize that the whole point of what we are doing, trade in the company of strangers, has actually been to not have that person remain a stranger. I'm
hmm,
referring to a very famous book written by a guy called Paul Seabright called In the Company of Strangers. And he makes the point that the economist's answer to what makes humans unique and different from every other animal on the planet is that we choose to trade with people we have never met. His
right.
canonical example is who has made the shirt that I'm wearing right now, by which he doesn't mean the company, he means the person.
Hmm,
And because you're going to be a stranger, I am still going to trust you, which no other animal is going to do. A chimpanzee does not trust a chimpanzee from another tribe. But a human being who meets another human being that they have never met before, and that other human being says, shall we trade? The first human being is going to say, sure, if it is in my interest, why not? We trade with strangers, but the point isn't trade. The point is getting to know that stranger. Or perhaps both of these are equally important points. And what we are going to miss out in the age of AI with those two-person firms and not having water coolers is the fraying of human connections. So, what
hmm,
should you do in the age of greater and greater automation, even if it means lesser economic rewards as opposed to starting a superstar two-person billion-dollar firm? Perhaps it makes sense to focus on figuring out what can I do to help my neighbors, my friends, my community through whatever skills I happen to have.
hmm.
Maybe this is a utopian dream, and maybe it's going to be much worse than what I'm describing. But one way out of the question that you just asked is to gravitate towards a world where you value human interactions more. If I'd said the same things that I just said to you right now 10 years ago in an economics viva, I would have been laughing myself out of class. But I catch myself saying this entirely seriously and hopefully. And it shows the kind of world that we're living in, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, over the weekend, I volunteered to help someone on the tech side. This guy is doing a fantastic, job, complete philanthropist kind of a work that he's doing.
Mhm.
And there was some tech work that had to be done, which earlier, when I spoke to him around 6, 7 years ago, I knew this work was needed. I knew this had to be how, like what can be done, but I didn't know how to do it. But now, given, क्लाउड कोड के भरोसे पार्टनर अभी बोल ही दिया है तो देख लेंगे on types. I just said I'm going to do this for you, right? And he's this one man army who's going after this big project. And I said, yeah, I will do this now, which I would not have done earlier, right?
Mhm.
That does not mean that today I have a lot of free time at hand.
Yeah,
It's not like I don't have work to do, but earlier that I would have just ruled that out. Now I'm saying, okay, the only barrier is for me to figure out, when I will do it. It's not how I will do it.
yeah,
So that sort of opens up, opportunities to contribute.
absolutely. And similarly, in my case, I take on projects that I would not have taken on earlier. I'm People think I'm joking when I say this, but I'm happy to pay people for me to go and lecture at a college. So you don't, not only should you not pay me, I will pay you. Just the idea of going out and speaking to young people and saying, this is what is happening, this is what I'm thinking, let's talk, meet other people, is I
Mm.
think entirely worth doing. So yeah, the fact that you and I are talking about it, but not just in theory, we are trying to build out more human connections. Hopefully
Yeah.
more people will do it. Is, like I said, one of the ways I think about how to answer the question that you just did. In an age
Mm.
of overt automation, what is left for us humans to do? This is one of the answers that I hope will work out.
And how do you think the introverts in the world are going to handle this then?
They are going to have to struggle. And I say that with such authority because I'm very much an introvert myself. Like I said, I would much
Mm.
prefer to sit at home and read a book rather than go out and have a conversation, unless the setting is right. So each
Mm.
one of us introverts owes it to ourselves to figure out what that right interaction is for us. And once you find it, fight your internal reluctance to step out. Go out and meet those people, have a good time, figure out what clicks for you, and get better at it. It's not easy, and I speak from personal experience, but we have no choice. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, and I would say introverts is still a milder challenge, right? There may
Yeah.
be other accessibility issues. I don't know if language is going to be an issue. In fact, I was talking to somebody over the weekend where we were debating whether English or the command over the English language, is it going to become too much of a currency of capability now? And I
Mm.
said, no, I haven't really tested server, till now, but I'm from what I'm hearing, maybe it is not necessarily all English. Maybe other Indian languages are also going to be good enough ways for you to converse with AI. I haven't tested that myself yet, but do you think that's also something which we should be thinking about?
In fact, if anything, I haven't thought deeply about this, so I'm winging the answer quite literally as we speak. But I would anticipate this won't be a problem as AI gets better and better. So the Babelfish from the
Hmm.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, not in that exact form. So I don't imagine somebody is going to be slipping a fish into your ear to understand every spoken language. But yeah, language I think is going to be a mostly solved problem. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, except to say that the advantage that coding in English confers upon you, the ability to speak with AI well in idiomatic English, perhaps that may be a slight advantage. But I hopefully I'm right when I say this. It mostly is going to be a solved problem.
Right. Yeah. I think I should probably talk to Naveen about this to check if English will be an advantage while programming with the AI. Maybe not is what I'm hoping for. And we should democratize things, even further, where if you can express whatever combination of languages, I think you should be good to go, is what I'm hoping the world comes down to.
Exactly. Correct.
All right. Okay, so many economists assume markets self correct after technological shocks. Why might AI shocks not self correct? And what economic mechanisms would fail?
Boy. Variety of different things. One, the rate of technological change. So culture changes slower than technology does. But when
Mm.
technology changes very, very quickly, culture finds it difficult to catch.
Mm.
That is something that we are going to struggle with in the times to come. So the reason I started with culture is because given how rapidly technology changes, culture may not keep up. And so therefore the equilibrating mechanisms in society may simply not work. It sounds
Mm.
very abstract, but what I'm trying to say is There is a particular kind of society with a particular set of norms, and this society has AI being introduced into it. The introduction of AI increases efficiency, but norms don't catch up.
Correct.
By the times norms catch up to this change technology, technology is advanced again.
Hmm.
And this inability of culture to keep up will create its own set of frictions, will create its own set of winners and losers, will create its own set of problems in society. And if technology keeps on advancing faster than culture can keep up, those divides are going to go up over time. And that quite possibly will lead to markets necessarily not equilibrating, not because of economic forces, but because of cultural forces.
Can you give me mm, a concrete example of this?
Okay. So, deliberately extreme one, which is not happening right now. And then, given how convincing what I'm about to say sounds, we can try and choose a more realistic one. So, say either this year or next year or the year after, we have robots that are able to effectively deliver stuff across Pune city
Hmm.
at very low prices. This might be drones, this might be robots, this might be a combination. Who knows?
Hmm.
So, as a consequence, there is going to be increasing unemployment in the so-called gig economy sector. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
Swiggy riders and Zomato riders and Blinkit riders are not going to be able to keep up. This is labor market displacement, a classical example. What
Right.
happens to these people? Where do they find newer jobs?
Hmm.
And by the time some of them are able to retrain themselves and find jobs in some new sector, robotics may start to take over that sector as well. And so what has happened is there was a culture, technology advanced, culture couldn't keep up, culture tried to adjust, but by the time culture started to adjust, technology advanced even further.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
maybe you have, like, and again, I'm being deliberately ridiculous, but maybe you have 3D printers at home that can print most of the stuff that you want. You don't even need to have it delivered.
Right.
And so this creates the labor market doesn't equilibrate because the technology changes quickly. In 2008, when the labor market needed to equilibrate because there was a large amount of losses in the housing sector,
Hmm.
people could adjust because the rate of technological change was nowhere near as high as it is right now. You are entering the same world, different sector.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now you are trying to enter a new world, new sector.
Hmm.
And so labor markets will not adjust because technology is changing too quickly. And that will have impacts upon the culture of the unemployed.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And that culture itself, the change culture, may make it even more difficult for labor markets to equilibrate. Maybe some people just give up and say there's no point in searching for a job. So they leave from the labor market. And the kind of impact that will have both on labor markets and on the culture of unemployment is what I'm trying to get at.
Hmm. Hmm.
This
Hmm.
is a deliberate example that has not happened so far. But now begin to ask yourself, might we begin to see this in the context of, say, for example, junior coders in the IT sector? Might we
Hmm.
begin to see this with junior financial analysts? It's the same thing that is happening, except it's
Hmm.
not robots and Zomato and Swiggy. It's
Hmm.
stuff that you and I are already beginning to figure out how to do ourselves without needing the help of a software firm.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that kind of thing is labor market equilibrium, I think, is going to be much more difficult to arrive at. And part of the reason is going to be cultural, not economic.
Right, right. And are you seeing, again, this could be purely anecdotal, but are you seeing anecdotal evidence of where, the labor market is shifting? What are the new things that people are doing because something has happened in what they were doing earlier?
Can tell you about a couple of examples of young students who have started community-led initiatives both to learn and to earn. There are a couple of students who have started collectives where they try to organize a platform for people to be able to sell handmade stuff, organize talks and events. So the girl who's running this earns her money by being a platform of sorts, but for human-to-human connections.
Hmm. Hmm.
And she's done well enough in this to get some sort of scholarship to study some program at ISB.
Hmm.
This is a student from Gokhale. I'll send you both the website. The
Hmm.
name is Sohani Dadfale. That's one anecdotal example where she's quite clear about the fact that what she's really building, she's using computers and technology and AI and whatnot, but the point is human to human connection.
Okay.
And I find it fascinating that a 21-year-old girl has chosen to do this rather than pursue what was her original choice, which was a career in economics.
Okay.
But one data point is an anecdote.
Right.
But,
Right.
but yeah, that I both her choice of what to do and the clarity at that age was fascinating to me. But she's still the exception, not the norm.
Right. And generally, in the world of economics, how do you find such data? How will I know that 50,000 junior coders who lost their jobs in IT services industry in 2026 in India did not go find another junior coder role, but actually went and took up something else, created a collective? How do you actually get this kind of data?
In India, getting this kind of data is really hard. We don't map or we don't have databases where you're able to track uh, information down at the kind of granularity that you're speaking of. So we will have anecdotal evidence, and we will have, the more you're entrenched in the placement sector within academia, not just academia, but the placement community within academia, the more you keep hearing stories such as these. So one of my major regrets for leaving the Berkeley Institute was I'm no longer privy to that particular sector. I don't miss correcting papers, but I really miss finding out who are the recruiters who are choosing to come this year. Why are they coming when they did not come last year? Why are they not coming this year when they came last year? The people who have not yet found a job over the last 2 years, what are they up to? People who have been fired when they got a job, what are they up to? You got to hear a lot of these stories when you work. When I worked in the placement cell at the Berkeley Institute, and but the that's a very indirect way to answer your question. That was when I was most connected to these stories. But even as an economist, there's not a formal data set that I would use to get a sense of the labor market. I would use conversations with a large number of students and recruiters. Students who were just about to enter the labor market or students who had just entered the labor market was a great way to get a pulse of this particular sector.
Right. But in other countries, is it any better?
Relatively better. So, a lady called Kyla Scanlon is doing excellent work on this in America. I
Mhm.
am blanking on the name of her Substack right now, but she has done good research of her own. So, even in America, I wouldn't say there is a database that tells you about this, but she runs a very popular Substack and is very popular on social media for talking about specifically this area. Other places, it is relatively easier to get this data, but even there, it's going to be a little difficult. There is a column in the Atlantic written by a guy called David Thompson about this topic, about how young people are trying to figure out how to uh, interact with the changing labor market.
What are the implications of not having this
I
data?
don't think we have thought seriously enough about the problem of training for the jobs of the future. And I don't just mean that in the context of AI. We've been, in a sense, behind the game ever since I was a master's student, probably before that as well. What we are taught in college is not what we do in the workplace. This was
Correct.
true of me. I'm guessing this was true of you. It's true of practically every adult you speak to in this country. And so there was always, that's the reason why onboarding or the gestation period before a person who joins an FT who joins as a junior employee takes that much time to come on speed, is because education isn't really about education at all in the context of a professional workplace. But earlier firms were willing to eat up that friction of training an employee just so in the manner which they needed to get that person be productive in their context. Now it's cheaper to train an AI to do so. And so
Which
what
is
you're
going to remain
missing out,
with you.
sorry,
Which is going to remain with you.
which
The
is
AI.
why, yeah, correct. Going to remain with you is going to cost much lesser, is never going to take a sick leave, on and on and on. The advantages
Correct.
are endless. And so that gap between what education thinks it is teaching you and what the corporate world knows it needs is getting bigger and bigger. That is going to be a problem that is going to very quickly become insurmountable if it has not already become insurmountable.
Yeah. So over the last 2 days, I think a combination of things, maybe starting with Niranjan's talk.
Yeah.
So Isha, I think over the weekend or Friday night or Saturday night, one of those, she had a dream. I keep saying she keeps having this Kekulesque, benzene ring kind of dreams.
Mm.
Where this particular dream was about making So there's a combination of some Squid Games kind of thing, though we've not watched Squid Games. There's something like that, Squid Games slash Hunger Games, and there was this whole thing of trying to understand all the jobs in the world and what are the tasks and skills that are required for each job. And something. So I think, post this discussion, I'm going to go back to her and ask her to recount whatever she remembers, and maybe there's this, something that we can actually start doing with that thing. When she was describing it, I was thinking maybe this is a job to be given, to an AI to just figure out all the jobs that exist in the world and look at all the skills that each of those jobs requires, and figure out what are the skills that kids should develop now in order to be prepared for this thing, and do some kind of prediction in terms of how these jobs change and all that, which is somewhat similar to what I think Microsoft did some time back, where they tried to look at which are the jobs that are high at highest risk of getting
Hmm.
impacted by AI and all that. I think they were trying to do something similar, but yeah, I think this
So,
merit.
if I've understood what you just described right now correctly, then the ONET database in America is a wonderful resource to use. In fact,
Okay.
the Anthropic Economic Index uses the ONET database, and
Hmm.
that is a very close concept to what I think you're describing right now.
Hmm. Okay.
There's a
Okay.
lot that I have to send you in terms of links, so hopefully I'll
Yes.
remember all of them and send them
Yeah,
once this
yeah,
is done.
yeah. And I see that we've already crossed 1 hour, and I've made the same mistake as last time, where I have probably covered the first one, two, three, four questions in my list, and the last five are still remaining, which means that we're going to record one more episode very soon, right?
Looking
Either
forward to it.
March or April. But like last time, I'm not going to let you go without some hot takes questions.
Sure.
So let's do these, right? So, one personal ritual outside work that keeps you intellectually honest as an economist in a world where the data changes faster than the models.
Until this year, the question was easy to answer. Teaching one offline course at the Gokhale Institute. So I quit
Hmm.
Gokhale full time in 2022, but I've taught one course there every year. And that ritual of walking into a classroom, not using AI, I mean, I do use AI in some classes, but that
Hmm.
act of talking in person and just using a chalk and a board is
Hmm.
wonderful for
Yeah.
multiple reasons. One, you get to inspire young people to the extent that I do. Second, it forces you to learn and teach in a way that you are very unused to, given what my day otherwise looks like. And third, the connection that you build with young people. So it's immensely rewarding, and it's a ritual that I've managed to keep on going. But this year, I think it's finally going to come to a halt. And the reason is because Gokhale now has 3 divisions, and correcting that many papers is beyond me.
And AI is not helping you there.
AI is not helping me there, exactly.
Okay. What's something you believe confidently in our last conversation, Feb 11th? I just checked the date,
Mhm.
that you have since changed your mind about. 3 weeks,
I'm
essentially.
going to be politically incorrect here, but what the hell? The parts of the American government are dumb, but they're not, they can't possibly be that dumb, was a conviction that I had at the time that we recorded. I have since updated my priors.
Okay. One book that shaped how you think about technology and human behavior, and one you would rewrite now, that you've seen what actually AI actually does to people's working lives.
The first question is easy to answer. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Persig.
Okay.
It's a book that I read when I was in my first year undergrad, and since then, every year I read it once.
Okay.
It's my annual ritual now. I can
Hmm.
quote parts of the book by now very easily. I
Hmm.
love the book. And the reason I bring it up is because it speaks about the classical and the romantic. His way of defining how to think about technology in a non technological point of view. Wonderful book to read. I happily recommend it to anybody and everybody. Remarkably, I don't think I would change that book in any way, which is, in a sense, the best compliment I can pay it. It's a book that, if anything, becomes even more worthwhile of a read in the age of AI. So if you haven't read it yet, please do. Not you, I'm sure
Okay,
you have,
that's interesting.
for the audience.
Yeah, yeah. So I had read it. I think around the same time, as in first year or second year, is when I think I was reading it. I
Mhm.
somehow could not finish the whole book. maybe I should just go back and
Oh,
try to
yes.
see what the book is all about now. I mean, I
Oh,
know, but I know the whole premise and the
yeah.
context and all of that. But at that time, I did not find it that impressive. But now that you have recommended it, maybe I will.
I should say that it very much is a function of which books you read at what age. So
Right.
apologies in advance if it doesn't work for you, but it clicked back then and it has resonated ever since in my case.
Yeah, yeah. That's the reason why I want to check it out because
Yeah,
you've
correct.
been reading it every year,
Yeah.
so obviously it has, it has aged well. So
Yeah.
yeah. Which overused word in the AI discourse, not a phrase, just one word, would you strike from every conference, paper, and LinkedIn post forever?
Well, I consume much more news about AI on Twitter than I do on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And I look forward to an age where we ban the phrase holy shit. Everything is holy shit these days. Holy shit, this company dropped that. Holy shit, I was able to do this. Holy shit, this model does this. That
Yeah.
level of overt excitement, I wish goes away and we become a little more relaxed and shanta about.
Maybe, that's also
Yeah,
quintessential AI tell, right?
exactly. Yes.
We once we put out this episode, all the models update,
Yeah, AIs make it happen.
two of your biggest champions are asking you to do this. So.
Come on.
And final one, you get a billboard in every university campus in India for 24 hours or a flex as whatever illegal flex. What's the most useful thing that you could say to a 20-year-old about building a career in an AI world in under 7 words?
Bunk classes start working.
Okay. On that note, fantastic as always, Ashish. And with the promise of doing this, one more time, I think I should just set a recurring monthly call with you so that we keep talking about what has changed since the last time we spoke and talking about So thanks a
The
lot.
way the world is going, by the time we start recording the next episode, you might want to ask what has changed since we started recording. Great fun, Harish. Thank you so much.